G'day and welcome to Kenty Blitz, your daily hit of NRL news. Kenty, we're back for another week. How'd your weekend go, all right?
Yeah, good weekend. Plenty on. And look, the footy was okay. I wouldn't say it was one we'll put in a bottle and keep for later to crack open again. But yeah, good. Yeah, good. Some good footy played in amongst some bad footy, I thought. But yeah, good weekend all up.
Yeah, nice. Well, let's start with a weekend wrap. First game, Thursday night, Sharks 30 defeated the Dragons 18.
Yeah.
Sharks were poor. I mean, Dragons were poor, came back.
Both teams were poor, I thought.
Yeah, 24 unanswered points in the second half.
Yeah. The problem with that game, I think, Warren, was, Sharks were terrible in the first half. Saints were, I think, false leaders. They had a couple of tries that came out of just a couple of individual brilliance in both instances that gave them the lead. And then they were terrible in the second half, just didn't come out and answer the bell. And I know we look at the result, we think, okay, Cronulla after a bit of a lean trot are back, but they've still got a lot of work ahead of them, Cronulla. They're a long way from the finished product and a long way from where they want to be. Yeah,
okay. It's interesting. In the papers yesterday, obviously, Shane Flanagan got pushed a little bit on his son Kyle playing 7, and he came out and protected him or said he was in good form, defended him, said he was in form.
He said he's one of the better players, didn't he? He's been one of the better performers at the Dragons. And look, I watch the Dragons. I don't think their halves are the current answer for them. And that said, though, I do agree with what Shane said. I don't think that Kyle Flanagan is the problem with the Dragons. I think there's other problems there, other things that need to be prioritised to get a turnaround in form. But Kyle Flanagan's the easy knock for people who don't know what they're talking about. And Shane Flanagan watches a hell of a lot more football than we are, and he's happy. And look, his job's on the line too. He's not going to keep playing his son if it's going to cost him his job. So he needs to be mindful of that, and I'm sure he is.
Can you talk to me about that, like the father and son combination, the pressure on both those players? There's been some fun. We'll go through that in a minute, but the kind of pressure, we saw that at Manly. At Parramatta, with father and son.
Brad Arthur recently. Yeah, we saw that. Jake Arthur, Look, that's been around, though, since the game's been played, Warren. You go, Bobby McCarthy was coaching the Gold Coast in the, late 80s, early 90s. I can't quite remember when he was there, early 90s, I think it was. And his young bloke was coming through, and there was pressure on him there. And the game's littered with fathers and sons who have teamed up together or, ironically, it doesn't happen a lot where they actually are at rival clubs. They generally are at the same club, which gives this, makes available that the allegation of nepotism and the fact that you've only got a job because your dad's the coach. Like, anyone that's been around footy long enough, that goes all the way back to our junior footy, doesn't it? Hearing that cry, and it can be a tricky one to navigate. And right now, the shining duo we've got in the game right now is Nathan Cleary, Ivan Cleary. But Nathan's such a good player, it just takes all the pressure off Ivan to pick him and justify picking him. But that also is something that Ivan has acknowledged and spoken about, the fact that he's lucky that Nathan is such a quality player that he hasn't had to suffer those allegations because Nathan just picks himself. Now, Shane does do that, and the fact that Kyle has followed him from club to club also lends itself to those allegations. But that said, Saints' problems, they're more than just what's going on in the halves. As I said, I don't think the halves are probably, certainly the way they're operating now, are the solution. And if Saints win a premiership, they won't be winning it with what they've got there now. But by the same token, who's better? Who's going to come in? Where do they go from there? And that's a justifiable explanation I think Shane Flanagan can give.
The argument from the fans would be give Ilias a go. Maybe that's moving Kyle to 6 and Young and dropping the Young. But I just want to ask you about last year because Kevy Walters and Billy Walters, and that seemed to be an issue at the Broncos and how Billy worked through that.
Well, Billy was sensational the way he worked through it. He just copped it on the chin. And if you know anything about Billy, and I don't know Billy that hardly at all, to be honest, but I do know Kevy reasonably well. And they're just matter-of-fact people. They don't make excuses. They don't bullshit to anybody. And from that point of view, I think that they handled it quite well. And Billy's such an honest footballer that he went out and proved why his father was picking him. He went out and did the job for his father, took pressure off his dad doing that, and he did a really good job at that. So That helped certainly last year, but yeah, there were allegations there also, and claims of nepotism and all the rest of it. But that said, Kevy's no longer there. Billy's still playing there, and Billy's playing quite well, I think, for the Broncos. He's been one of the, they've got a stack of hookers, the Broncos, but he's been one of the better performers in there at dummy half. He brings a slightly different game to what the classical dummy half brings these days, but he's done a good job. And
it's interesting because Jed Stewart this week is making his debut, they're saying, for the Raiders, and it was a matter of the senior players coming to Ricky and saying it's time to pick Jed, and he was reluctant to pick his own son. Yeah. What do you know about Jed? Do you know much about him?
I don't know a lot about him. I know he came from a rugby union background. He played sevens, and he was quite a good sevens player. He I'm pretty sure he played for like the Australian sevens team or a version of the Australian sevens team on his way through, and then he wanted to switch from there to rugby league. Obviously, living in Canberra, the Raiders, with his dad as a coach, were the obvious choice for him. And I do know that Ricky has had his own concerns about coaching his son and all the rest of it. And I think it's quite telling too was that the fact that the players went to Ricky and said, "Mate, it's time to pick him." And the Raiders are playing with such an honesty to their game at the moment, in their own accountability, in their teammates being kept accountable by each other, that it doesn't surprise me that the senior Raiders have done that, and that there's obviously Tamale going down hurt has opened up a spot there on the wing. Now that would have been the headache Ricky would have been wrestling with. The fact that the player said, "Mate, it's time to pick him," would give him some contentment, but also it helps to make the decision smoother. And I think that. It's still ahead of him. Like, there's a lot of work there for Jed to do still. But he's a big bugger. He's well over 6 foot, quite tall. So, Ricky might want to go and get a hair lock tested there. It's just
he's the A-type winger these days, though, right? That's the prototypical size.
Exactly. He is, and he's a big, strong guy. He's not, he wouldn't have that explosive strength that say Tamale has, even though he's in a smaller package. But he's big. He's going to be great under the high ball with Jamal Fogarty kicking the ball to that wing. The Raiders are going to have a pretty significant shot for some points.
Just on those big wingers, you see Josh Bostock again? I mean, he is a phenomenal... Jack Bostock, sorry. Yeah. He is a phenomenal footballer.
Yeah, great footballer. Yeah, counting his tries.
Then bomb the fifth. We'll talk about that. Mate, you've been in the game 33 years. You've been on the planet 50 years. Talk to me about some of the better father-son combinations.
Father-son, look, there's been a stack, okay? And, right from the start, I remember... my early days, Johnny Lang was coaching at Cronulla, and he's, Marty Lang was playing the front row. Marty Lang was another one who did the right thing by his father, that he took selection out of his father's hands. He just played so well, he had to be picked. He was an Origin player, so he represented.
He was the original run it straight guy. He just didn't. He just went in a straight line.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And I tell you what, fearless player. Super intelligent too, Marty.
Was he?
Marty
Lang,
right. Very, very intelligent, which didn't play that way, but just in himself, and lovely fella as well. But so they were around. Bob Fulton had his young blokes, particularly Scott, playing in the NRL at the time. I still remember
Wayne and Mitch Pearce.
Well, Wayne and Mitch Pearce. Mitch came along a bit later. I still remember when Mitch got signed by the Roosters and. I actually went out with him not long after he'd signed with the Roosters, and not
big night.
No, well, it turned into one, but it was just one of those nights where we had mutual friends, and it was a bit, what's this guy doing here? But but he was always earmarked from very, very early stages, Mitch, that he was going to be something special. I remember.
Why didn't he stay? Why didn't he go to the Tigers?
Because the Roosters, he liked what the Roosters offered him. The Roosters offered him. Well, they had
not the brown paper bags.
No. They'd already made a couple of premierships, and they were in that period when Ricky Stewart was coach from 2001, 2, 3, and I think he didn't go there till 7 was his year. So they turned around the old Transit Lounge days, and they were setting up what became apparent that they set themselves up for long-term success. They've been successful for the past 20 years or more now, and he could see that, and that's why he went there, and he wanted to trust in the education they were going to give him, and I think he got that, Mitch. I think they did a great job. My favourite father-son combination, though, is Matt Rogers and Steve Rogers.
Yeah, well.
So Steve Rogers...
Both played for Australia.
Both phenomenal. And Steve Rogers look, I don't like every time there's a great player, people say he should be an immortal, but I'm stunned that Steve Rogers is never in the conversation. He should be. He should be at least in the conversation. I'm not an advocate for let's just fill the joint full of immortals and have.
Why do you say that? Why do you think he's up there?
Because he could do everything. He represented Australia for 10 years, if not more. I'm not quite sure the exact, but he had a decade.
5'8" in centre, right?
He could play lock.
Yeah,
he could defend. He was a centre who could defend. He had blistering speed off the mark. He could chip and chase. Now, this is back in the days when this was a big part of the game, and only the great ones could do that. But Steve Rogers could do everything on the field. He could run 90 metres and score a try. Yeah. He could set up. He could ball play. Him and Mick Cronin in the Centres for Australia was just one of those sublime partnerships. But Steve Rogers, he made Cronulla good. He helped Cronulla as a kid in the what was it, the 73 grand final. I think he got where he played. He was just magnificent. And he paid the price. I think that everyone's memory is short-term memory. So people are going now, Jonathan Thurston and whoever else should be the immortals. The fact that Steve Rogers has just been forgotten from the conversation is a travesty for the game because he was something pretty special.
Particularly with the ball in hand, right? He was a phenomenal balance.
He could do it all. He was a beautiful runner. Balance, he had the swerve, he could step, he had speed, he had short-term speed, he off the mark, he could run long distance, he could tackle. He towards the end of his career when he had a couple of injuries and his pace started to go, he went to St George and played lock there. And it was as good as any lock in the game at the time. So just wonderful player. And Matt was not far behind. Matt was greatly underestimated in our game.
Dual international too, played rugby, played for Wallabies.
Very good player, mate. Yeah.
Mate, talk to me about Manly. Titans 28 defeated Manly 8. What's going wrong?
Absolute dog of a game. Okay. And I tell you what, if you sat down, you made it to the last minute of this game, you need to get some help. Because
I said on Thursday,
unless you're a Titans fan.
Friday night was the night to go out.
Yeah, it was just an awful game to watch. Manly just weren't in the game. Their heads weren't there. And the Titans came out. I like what Des said before the game. He said he thought he got to him during the week. He finally reached him, and he appealed to their instinct and their pride, and he felt he got that trigger from them, that little spark, and we saw that. And the Titans, I thought, were very good. They came out, and it was an awful game to watch. There was not a lot of high quality skill in the game, and that's why it was won by the team that tried hardest. And the concern for Manly kind of tried. They put themselves in and about, but when it got a bit tough, you know what? We're not prepared to go there.
So what's going on there? I mean, people are saying it's DCE, not coming out and saying, well, do you buy that? Or is that a cop-out?
Look, Manly started the season well, and you could almost tie in their drop in form to the time he went on TV and announced he was leaving the club. You can't deny it would have been a massive bombshell within the club when he did that, and that there would have been some kind of impact throughout the club because of that. Manly clearly have not handled it well. At some point, when these sorts of things happen within clubs, Warren, they can fester and they can sit around and you can never quite get over them. And generally it's when people don't want to acknowledge it's happening, or they just want to pretend, and they try to move on too quick. The great example was the Bulldogs in '95 with the salary cap, and they tried to just move on. They couldn't do it. They couldn't get past it, and they just went through dog of a performance week after week until finally Chris Anderson called them in and said, guys, let's just get it out. And so anything that anybody wanted to say got said that day. And it got a bit explosive, and tempers got a little bit short, but they got it all off their chest and they sorted it out. They galvanised, went through, won the competition. Okay, now I don't think Manly are going to do that, but I don't think there's an honesty between the team. Okay, between the teammates out there on the field, and I think that's holding something back in their performance, that they're not being honest with each other.
Well, it's interesting because when When I don't know who it was, a TV presenter asked Jake Turbo what he thought about DCE going. He said, "I don't care where he goes."
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I just kind of thought that was a bit off at the stage, like.
Yeah, and the problem with that is you that's already a reduction in commitment. That's your care's going down, so your commitment's going down. I don't care where he goes. Well,
you should care because he's a mate who you've played with for.
Well, you've
a
still
decade.
got something to do together.
Yep.
You've still got to go out and still got to bleed for each other. So you've still got work to be done together. Now, Manly clearly aren't getting there, and it's whether it's Coach Seabold or. I don't think it's really messed off. It probably does come down on the coach now to basically get them all in and just say, guys, we can go through the rest of the season like this where we've got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and we'll win the odd game, but we'll lose more. Or we can say, you know what, we've got some pretty talented players here, which they do. They've got a lot of talent there at Manly. And that's what's so disappointing about how they're going, is that we've got some talented players here. Are we going to buy in or not? And make the decision. Now, if they're not, if the players are not happy having Daly Cherry Evans in the team because they know he's leaving, then don't play him.
Yeah, wow. That'd be big.
But don't play him. Give
big.
Yourself the best chance to win.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's the best thing that's happened over at West Tigers is the player they didn't want there. They wouldn't admit it, but the player they didn't want there, they let go.
Yeah, okay.
He's now happier playing at Canterbury. They're happy he's no longer there at West Tigers.
Geez, wouldn't that be a turn up? I guess there's 2 weeks to go, June 30. You can't see it happening. But
well, look, at the moment, Manly are paying him under false pretenses and they're going to go through the rest of the season. They're battling to make the 8. Now, he's clearly the best half in the club. But if you've got to start moving forward, I know Fogarty's coming there next year, but if you've got to start moving forward, maybe you just say, right, bite the bullet. But you just cannot sit there and continue to let this happen. Now, if it's not Daly Cherry Evans, then what is the problem? Okay? Now, and there people listening to this going, oh, well, it's origin disruptions.
Yeah.
Okay? And I heard a lot of complaints over the weekend from people saying this is why I hate footy. They looked at the Manly Titans game. Look at the Manly Titans game. Hate footy. This is why Origin should be club football should be suspended during Origin because this is what happens. Well, how many Manly players are involved in Origin? It's a duck egg.
Yep, 0.
They're not playing. Manly did not have one player not play on Friday because they were involved in Origin.
Yeah, good point.
The Titans who beat them had their 2 best props playing.
Yep.
They overcame that. So you can't use that argument that it's weakened the team. Manly were not weakened by Origin. Titans were. Titans put a score on it. So it doesn't make sense. And people can sit there and continue that narrative. But one, we don't have a better alternative. Suspending the competition is not the alternative.
No.
Okay. Can you imagine sitting, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but just say this. You imagine going off, sitting here now, no football last weekend, and we're being put to sleep by the Origin preparation?
Be a very short show.
But Warren, there's nothing to sell Origin. No. It's as boring as batshit. Yeah. It really is. It's.
You had enough of that? You sick of it?
Mate, look, we love Origin. We love the concept, okay? But I think it's incumbent upon the players to help promote the game.
Yeah.
And one, you shouldn't be allowed to have self-imposed media bans. And 2, I think far more players have got to be made available to speak. And 3, I think the players have got to start having some balls and actually coming out and understand that the promotion is part of the $30,000 fee that you're getting paid.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, and you've got to start selling the game because I don't know. Look, Origin won't die, so I don't want to be hysterical about that. But this is the issue with this thing. Every week you get 400,000 people watch NRL Friday night. Okay, 200,000, 250,000 some weeks if it's a particularly bad game. To get Origin, you get up about 2 million. So that shows you around the country there's about 1.6 casual fans. They're not rusted-ons. The rusted-ons watch Friday night footy. Rusted-ons sat through Manly Titans the other night, as poor as it was.
Yeah.
Okay? But there's 1.6 million casual fans out there.
Blow-ins.
Who just want to watch Origin because it is an event.
Yep.
It is something special.
Yep.
It is like watching the Matildas play or the Socceroos play.
Yep.
It is something outside the norm. But if they keep putting us to sleep with lack of I suppose, publicity before the game.
Hype.
There's lack of hype's a good word. Because they refuse to say anything that might be quite contentious, even mildly contentious. And then by the same token, they do what they did. They give us what they gave us in game one, which was a glorified club game. Okay, there was not. If you put like a Roosters jersey and a Melbourne jersey on there, you could have quite easily seen them as a club game, the way that Origin was played. Okay. The point of difference between Origin and club football, there was always quite apparent. It was easy to pick. That game we saw in game one, the intensity, obviously the violence that came in occasionally when the blow-ups, and how personal the game was to everybody. Okay, but they're playing now like it's a club game, just with the better players playing. And it's not. It's something is missing. You can argue with it, but something is missing. Now, I don't want to turn this into a bring back the Biff type argument. There should be more to it. When Spencer Leniu got the ball in Origin 1, Queensland teams of the past and even Queensland teams in the post non-punching era would have made a statement. They would have gang tackled him. They would have come in. One guy would have hit him. One guy would have come in. They would have put 4 or 5 in that tackle, driven him back, and all collapsed on top of him and made a statement. Pushed his head down on the way Pushed his head down and done all that sort of stuff and made a statement. But they just tackled him like it was any other guy running the ball. They didn't kick off to him, which I thought was gutless.
Will they do that this week?
I'll be. It's funny, I don't know, because I think part of them go, we're not going to give people what they want. Look like we've responded or buckled to what they've demanded. Okay, so there'll be that mentality from Billy Slater and the Queenslanders that they don't want to be seen to be bowing to that. But the other part to it is, I think Queensland need to. I think Queensland need to make it personal. I think Queensland need to sit there and go, you know what? We're not going to cop this. We can't out-football this New South Wales team.
Nah, too good.
They can't do it. They can't win the game doing it that way. They need to understand that. And the great Queensland teams of the past understood that. So what they did was they would go away and they would say, right, let's find another way to beat them. And they did it through effort and guts and just getting up off the ground.
Talk to me about the potential for this to be a bit of a get square from the referees. Do you think that comes into their mind?
Look, the problem with Origin is before every game that they try to influence the referees because penalties are so important. What's been overlooked in New South Wales' victory in Game 1 in Queensland, which is Suncorp Stadium, let's remember that. It's Queensland's home crowd. New South Wales got off to a 5-0 penalty count. I think it finished up 9-6 in favour of New South Wales. It's almost unheard of.
Yeah, first time in a decade or something.
Yeah, almost unheard of that New South Wales win the penalty count. Now, the referee won't be told to favour Queensland with the penalties, okay? He won't be told that. But what you've got to question is there's some like subconscious bias.
Yes.
The NRL obviously know it's more profitable if Queensland win and it goes to a decider. Everyone in rugby league knows that what keeps the series alive is not just obviously in the score point of view, but from an interest point of view, is if the series gets squared at 1-1. Okay, does that sit in the back of the referee's mind? Look, probably, right? Probably. Does he deliberately go out and favour a team? No, they don't. But I think there is this aspect of subconscious bias where it sits in the back of his mind and it's like when you watch a boxing match, people generally tend to watch the guy they think is going to win. Jeff Fenwick and Zuma Nelson. You talk to most people, everyone has Fenwick winning that by a mile. The fact is it was a very close fight. Fenwick won the fight, but it was still a very close fight. You look at the way fans watch their weekend games. They generally watch the ball or they'll watch their own team. They don't watch what the other team. You say to most fans, who played well for the opposition today, unless someone's like Jack Bosak scored 4 tries, they don't know. They couldn't tell you. They don't watch it. So people have their own bias when they watch sporting events according to who they like and who they favour. Now, we're trying to expect referees not to have that. He's trying to get help not to have that from the bunker and from the fans with no eyes on the sideline holding the flag. But it's tough to overcome. And I think Queensland will have the home crowd support in Perth, despite the fact that New South Wales generally perform better over there. And I don't know which way to go, but I would be shocked if New South Wales win the penalty count in this game.
I want to ask you about what could have been a referee blunder on the weekend. The Roosters defeated the Knights 12-8. There was a try. You see that try? You would have seen that
Which try are you talking about?
It's the last try for the Roosters to go up, whether or not he had downward pressure.
Well, it looked like there was separation.
Yeah.
And you say, well, was it controversy? Well, there should have been controversy. What was it, 14-8 at the end of the final score?
12-8, was it?
12-8?
12-8, yeah.
12-8. So there you go. And they got the try. To me, I thought it was no try.
Yeah, easily, I thought.
Yeah, no try. There's separation there. I don't know what. Yeah, look, I've swore after having David Fairley on prime time that we would not hop into the referees all the time because he explained how.
Well, that was a bunker. That was a bunker decision.
Yeah, but he explained how tough the bunker is.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and how tough it is and what they're looking at and the fact that they do have other angles. But I, for the life of me, some weeks cannot agree with the bunker. I just sit there and I've got no idea how they got to their decisions. It frustrates me, like it frustrates everybody else. But the fact is, I see that they've got so much going on. I try to sympathise with them and give them the benefit of the doubt.
If you're an East fan, you're probably saying it's a try. If you support 16 or you're a neutral, 16 other teams, I don't think that can be a try. The other big thing that came out of that game was Victor Radley got concussed again. That's his 7th concussion in 4 years.
Yeah, it's a concern.
4th in 2 years.
Yep. Yeah, it's
where to from here for him?
I don't know, Victor. I'm going to have Victor on prime time this week, so we're going to have a bit of a chat about that. And at some point, you've got to sit there and look. He's a warrior. Clearly, it appears to me because the concussions are getting less savage, but are still resulting in concussions, that there still seems to be some ongoing injury that's there that hasn't fully healed, which is making it easier to get knocked out with each successive concussion. But that's Byron, the problem with it, there's so little we know about the brain and concussions and how that works that it's hard to have a definitive view on it. You know, you break an arm, we know how long it takes for the bone to heal before you can play again. And we even know down, they can tell you within a few days, give or take, how long before you be able to start doing push-ups or how long you start bench press and then how long you'll be able to withstand impact and all those sorts of things. So we all know that. We know if you tear a hamstring, how long it's going to take, depending on whether it's grade 1, 2, or 3, how long that's going to take. And again, they get that pretty well right. But then we also see players who have repetitive hamstrings, so they're clearly not getting it right. I think we could be having the same situation with the brain injury, with the concussions. That we've already seen Boyd Cordner retired. We've seen Jake Friend retired.
Well, I mean, there's one thing. Yeah, one thing we know is the Roosters, handle that very well. Probably the best in the game so far. They've had the most instances.
But you also got to start to ask yourself, why is it your players continue to get these repetitive concussions too? Like, what is there something happening there?
Training, you think?
Well, I don't know whether it's training or technique. Okay, that's one thing. Then the other thing is you hear little whispers that no one wants to talk about of players getting concussed at training and the club don't report it because that way they're not obliged to stand the player down for 11 days. So the Roosters do it by the book. They do a very good job. They have enormous care for their players. And I think they're extremely concerned right now about Victor and his future.
Mate, I want to ask you about the Dolphins. Seem to be the form team of the competition. Defeated the Cowboys 58-4.
Yeah.
Seem to have scored, I think, 160 points compared to 14 over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. A bit of a false narrative from the point of view. I thought the Cowboys were extremely poor.
Right.
And basically, look, you don't like to be accused of not caring, but I think there was a period there where the Cowboys were starting to say to themselves, how long to go? Looking up at the clock saying, mate, I'm just about done. And they'd already clocked off. They were out of the contest well before full time. And
whose fault's that?
I mean emotionally.
Whose fault's that? Is it the players? Is it the coaches for not getting him up? Is it the leaders within the club?
Both.
Right.
It's both. It's all of the above. Okay.
So obviously there's some issues.
Coach has got to find something to get him make it personal again. He's got to find that trigger inside them to get them caring about the result. The players it's on them to also go out and do that. The one of the problems with the modern player is because it's a professional game and it's a job these days and all the rest of it. Their buying sometimes can be a little bit on the low side. Emotionally, they're not there. Whereas back in the old days, where they had people work jobs, the footy on the weekend was like a release. They couldn't wait to get there. Okay. But that's a big problem. The Dolphins were tremendous, and they did it the right way. They didn't go out and blow and ambush them and blow them away quickly. They went out and they just played good, solid football, and they wore them down. And then when they wore them down, they didn't take their foot off the throat. So they were really good. I'm really impressed with them.
They seem to have overcome that issue we were talking about earlier in the year with the coach who follows Wayne Bennett.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Look, Christian Wolf. Look, he was always if there was going to be a guy
who could break that mould.
Yeah, it was Christian Wolf. Christian Wolf had won premierships in the Queensland State League. Okay. But had also gone over and coached at Helens and won premierships over there. So he'd had experience of coaching at that high level. And that's so when he gets in the NRL, and that probably became apparent because when they did have that poor start to the season and they were struggling a bit, he didn't panic. He didn't sit there and start.
Because they were poor, weren't they?
They were. And but he didn't listen to outside noise. He didn't sit there and start swapping things around and hopefully this works, hopefully that works. He had already in his mind what he thought they needed to do, and he stuck with it, and he just coached through it. And people say you don't really know anything about coaching until you've lost 4 in a row. And Christian Wolf's been through all that. He knows what he can do as a coach, and he saw the club through that period, which justifies why they got him in there. And he's reaping the benefits of it now.
Yeah. Final game of the week was the Bulldogs defeating the Rabbits 24-18. I just want to mention quickly before we go, the Rabbits have a lot of players out. They look up against it now. They lost Jai Gray's out for 2 months. Colin Matangi now got an eye socket injury. Jaden Sullivan out with calf. Cody Walker comes back. But they look to be in trouble, the Rabbits.
Yeah, those injuries come on top of injuries they've already got. So, Wayne Bennett actually spoke about that pre-game, about the injuries that they've had this season. They've had a tough run, the Rabbitohs. Look, they're only 2 points out of the 8. They're 14th at the moment on the ladder, but they're only 2 points out of the 8. Now, that says it's not beyond belief that they can still make the finals. The hard part they're going to have, I think they've already had 2 buys. I'm not sure. I think they've already had 2. So they've only got 1 left for the season. So they don't have a lot of rest periods. And I think it's going to be pretty tough, given how condensed it is around that period. You're going to have to get something pretty special out of the Rabbitohs to push through that with injuries and to be able to break free from that pack of teams who are all on 16 and 14 points.
Yeah, very good. All right, well, that's it for Monday Blitz. We'll see you tomorrow.